Hi, this is Zoe, and this is episode 203 of the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. And today we're talking about leadership frameworks for culture and strategy. So, just simple, easy topics. They are big ones, but we're going to zero in on some pretty critical fundamentals, which will make a massive difference to you and your leadership practice. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, where we share all things people stuff in leadership. Learn from leaders who have done the hard yards and learn from experience. Hear from expert authors about the latest insights from culture to strategy and messy people dynamics. Get tips and insights from multiple award-winning author and leadership expert herself, Zoe Routh. Now, on with the show.
Well, the podcast giveaway is in full swing. So if you haven't rated and reviewed the podcast and put your entry into our form, do it now because you're guaranteed to get one of our exclusive People Stuff journals. I'm not selling them anywhere. Only my clients get them and those who actually put in their review and pop it in to our form to let us know that you've done it. And we've been getting some really lovely reviews, and I thought I'd share some of them with you as a special thank you and singing out. Yes, Ma, I'm going to sing the review. A sing out to the listeners who have taken the time and effort to put in a review, which I so appreciate. This one's from Fran Cormack, and he says, I love the energy Zoe brings to the People Stuff podcast. Well, thank you, Fran. I do bring lots of energy to it, I agree. Her enthusiasm shines through, and each episode has a very engaging guest that brings a wealth of experience from across a variety of industries. One thing you can definitely count on is there will never be a boring People Stuff podcast. Thank you, Fran. I hope it's never boring. I hope it's always useful. Not always have a guest, like today it's me, so I'm guesting myself, I guess. But I do appreciate the fact that you find my enthusiasm contagious. I know that another listener, Ilea, listens to the podcast on 1.5 speed, and she says, you sound very lively. I'm like, I'm sure I do at 1.5 times speed. That's kind of fun. Try putting up to 2 times speed and see what happens then. Okay, here's a 5-star review from Jess Tyel. So many golden nuggets. It's very engaging and presents high quality content. Well done. Thank you, Jess. Much appreciated. And this one is from Tallman3, and he says, this is a podcast not to be missed. If you are a leader or an aspiring leader, do yourself a favor and subscribe to Zoe's podcast. Yes, do yourself that favor. Always interesting, often challenging, but above all, illuminating. And she has some wonderful guests on the podcast as well. Seriously, though, do yourself a favor and listen in. So thank you, Andrew Tallman3. I very much appreciate it. It brings me joy to hear your feedback and to know that what I'm bringing to you is of value and of service. Because why else would I spend all this time and energy putting this stuff together? It's certainly not so I can sit underneath the stairs in my cubicle recording this show. It's very uncomfortable under here, by the way. I sit on a Swiss ball, and they're supposed to be good for your back, but honestly, they're not that comfortable. In other personal updates, in the meantime, the novel continues. So after about a 2-week hiatus, after reading a couple books about novel writing, whereupon I discovered I don't know what I'm doing, that sobering realization kind of threw me off track a little bit until I just buckled down and got back into it. And I've sketched some scene outlines and some some character sketches, and now I feel I have a bit more traction. So I was banging away on the keyboard this morning and had a really nice flow session with one of the early chapters in the book. And it's going to be fun. It's probably going to take me a lot longer than I anticipated. It's quite a complex novel. I'm looking at complex issues of the future of food production and building communities and off-world communities. So yeah, there's a lot in it. And it's still fun. So it's on track, but it's going to take a while. And I don't have a title for it yet either. I am going to be launching an ambassadors group, which you'll be invited to join if you want. And that's if you want to participate in some of the behind the scenes action of writing my novel. You'll be asked for things like what title looks the best, what book cover might work, and maybe some ahead screenings. It's not really a screening, readings. Yeah, advanced readings of some of the chapters so you can get to meet some of the characters as we go along. So if you're into that, stay tuned. I will be getting that off the ground in the next month or so. And that's the Ambassador Group. Another personal update. I've started Aikido. Yes, finally. I've been talking about Aikido for years. It's one of the central metaphors in my emotional intelligence workshop. When I do difficult conversations, I always talk about emotional Aikido. Aikido is a Japanese martial art that has at its main ethos to disable your opponent without hopefully doing harm to either you or them. I love that philosophy, and I use that metaphor and that approach in my approach to difficult conversations. Well, I figured after so many years of talking about Aikido, I should probably learn a little bit of it. So I've done 7 classes so far and still have no idea what I'm doing. This is the year of learning stuff and going back to beginnings and being a beginner. They always talk about beginner's mind. It's like beginner's mind is scrambled. I tell you what, because in my Aikido class, they bundle me into the class with a whole bunch of very experienced, seasoned black belts. And they do stuff in a way that just looks beautiful and effortless. And I'm still learning how to stand and walk. But there you go. I'm at a starting point. They all started there too. So there you go. That's in addition to the running and weights and PT that I'm doing. And I was reflecting on this earlier, how far I've come in terms of my fitness and my energy. It's ebbed and flowed over the years, especially since I had cancer in 2005. In 2016, I had a big dip in energy as well as I went through adrenal fatigue. And it's taken me a while to come back from that. And I feel really good right now. I feel strong and powerful, and I'm really grateful for my health, that I can ride my bike, go to the gym, go running, do Aikido, go on long treks. It's really good. It's one of my main assets, and I've put a lot of care and attention into my health and well-being. And it's certainly something I advocate for all of my clients and you. You should be doing lots of self-care as well. So yeah, those are my little personal updates. Professional ones, I've been speaking at a number of events. You can still join into one of them. This one is Vid21. It's set up by Julia Steele, the amazing Julia Steele. It's a 3-week online conference. She ran something similar last year. When COVID hit, she went into action and she galvanized as many people in her network as she could. And she put on this 3-week-long free online conference. And there were some amazing speakers sharing brilliant content. I mean, what else did we have to do? It was lockdown. And yet she provided the community, the space, and the platform to bring people together from around the world to share these fabulous insights. And it's happening right now. I spoke on March 15th, and you can still join, get the recordings, and join in for the last week of the show, which is, I think it runs through the end of next week, end of March there. So jump in on there. I will put a link to Vid21 in the show notes. You can't go wrong. It's been a brilliant event, and it will continue to be so. I also spoke at the CPA as part of their celebrating International Women's Day. And we were talking about saying no to status quo. And that was really fun. You know, it's like my big question with that is, if we're saying no to the status quo, what are we saying yes to? And I think this is a really important question in all sorts of different leadership facets. You can't just rail against something. You have to be pro something. You have to give something for people to lean into and to look forward to. And as leaders, it's part of our responsibility to help craft that picture with our people about what it is that we are leaning forward into. What are we creating? Not just avoiding and pushing against. So that was really cool. And coming up, also, I have a talk with the YWCA, the Tina Talks, which is a month-long celebration of International Women's Day. And that's going to be really excellent as well. It's how to deal with difficult people. And you know I love that topic. That's why I wrote people stuff. And so that's going to be super, super fun. All right, so on to the main topic of the day. Leadership frameworks for culture and strategy. This first part of the year, I've been doing a lot of culture facilitated workshops and strategy facilitated workshops. Not often together, like it's either usually culture or strategy. And I just wanted to share some of the things I've been observing with some of the workshops that I've done and also interviewing clients about their challenges with both culture and strategy. And I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can avoid doing. Here's what I am noticing is that organizations are still drafting strategic plans for up to 5 years from now. Hello. How much do things change and how quickly? From if you rewind 18 months ago, the pandemic wasn't even on the horizon. And then whammo, the world as we knew it changed. So having a strategic plan that lasts 5 years is doomed to fail. What I recommend instead is to have a strategic intention with a shorter operational plan. Your strategic intention might be between 1 and 5 years, but it kind of sets the expectation that things may change and you have the responsibility to stay on top of and in front of those potential changes. So that's the first thing, what are you sticking yourself to? Is it a rigid plan that hasn't got any flexibility or responsiveness? In which case, that's a big problem. Okay. This is the other thing I'm noticing too in looking at different organizations' strategic plans. And feel free to Google any organization and have a look at their strategic plan and check against this. I find that they are often a gobbledygook of empty management speak. Things like, we want to help people feel empowered. Really? What does that actually mean? How do you empower people? It sounds like a gift from the god. Here's the rod of power, off you go. Why don't we say something like, people have and make choices? That's what we help people do. We help people to have and make choices. And here's another goobly goopy one. We help create sustainable futures. What does that mean? What does sustainable mean? And when you say sustainable, do you mean like ecologically, financially? What does it actually mean? How about this as a replacement? We have the resources we need now and into the future. Okay. And if you want to get more explicit, it could be financial resources, it could be food resources, it could be living resources, whatever. But sustainable future, what the? Here's another example. We run efficient and productive supply chain. Okay. What does efficient mean and what does productive mean? How about this? We move more stuff quickly. Doesn't that make more sense? The whole point about this, and I always point to my good friend Stacey Barr's work. She is a key performance indicator specialist. She teaches people how to measure things that matter properly. And one of her bugbears, and has since infected me as a bugbear too, is using weasel words. Words that look substantial but are really empty. Kind of like an egg that has had a do-over by a weasel. Weasels go into a bird's nest, poke a little hole in the egg, suck out the juice, but leave an empty shell. What a horrible thing to do, right? So weasel words. Sustainability is one of them. Efficient is another one. Productive is another one. You need to make it more tangible and gritty and simple so that it doesn't look just like waffle when you read through it. Okay, that was a bit soapboxy. So that's one of the key things not to do. Here's the other thing I've noticed in strategic plans. They're also a mashup of projects, targets, milestones, and measures all in the one sentence often. Here's what you really want to do. You want to break those things out into their individual ingredients. You want to define your results. What is it that you actually want to see, hear, feel, touch, and taste at the end of all your activity? That's a result. Describe it. Then describe the measure. How do you know that thing that you're describing, what you can see, touch, hear, feel, and taste, how do you know that it's come about? How can you measure it? How can you count things about it? And you might be counting the improvement rate per cycle. You might be measuring the sales cycle of different products. You might be measuring the life cycle of a product. You might be measuring the number of clients who come through your doors. Those are the measures, right? So there's something that you're going to count about the result that you're describing. Then there's a target. If you have enough data already, you might have a reasonable chance at setting a target, a stretch target even. and you might even have a pie in the sky target. But if you don't have data and you've never done something before, then your targets are going to be kind of a bit of a stab in the dark. So you may or may not choose to have a target. So this might be, for example, if you've got a sales target, it might be, okay, let's say you're aiming for 50 new clients per month. Now, if you've never had a client, who knows? This may be ambitious, it may not be, but that is a target. You may want to be open to reviewing that once you start moving on your activities. Okay, result, then the measure, then the target, then the projects, the improvement projects. The whole idea of a strategic intention and a map of your results is to look at the system of your organization, the ecosystem of your organization. And everything sort of interacts with each other, and there's those little interactions can either go smoothly or create friction. Ultimately, you want the ecosystem of your organization to be optimized to produce the results that you're after. Is optimized a weasel word? No, I don't think so in this context. Let me try rephrasing it though. You want all the systems in your organization to work as smoothly as possible. I was about to say efficiently, then I caught myself. So your improvement projects are about improving the system so that you get the results. You want to be measuring the results, which is the lag outcome of all of your activity, as well as the activities within the system that are generating the results, the upstream stuff. So it's not just about the sales, it's about how you do your approaches. Are your approaches effective? Are you doing enough of them? So there might be some measures in there that you want to look at. Okay, so that's how I'd revamp somebody's strategic plan. I'd break out the red pen, slash through the weasel words, look at if they've mashed up improvement projects, results, targets, and milestones all in one go and tease those apart. And then itemize each of those things in a nice little easy to understand language. Rant over. Here's what I'm noticing in my culture facilitation workshops. I love doing both these kinds of workshops, either the strategy ones, and often with the strategy ones we're looking at results and teasing out how to get to those results, or we're doing big picture scenario planning. So looking at trends that are affecting the organization and the sector and mapping out different scenarios to see how we can be on the front foot, assessing them. With the culture stuff facilitation that I do, it's usually with an executive team, and we are looking at the fundamentals of how that team operates. Do they have a culture compass in place? Do they know what their purpose is? Do they know what their values are? Do they know who they are serving and are explicit in that? Do they have a behavior charter and do's and don'ts and behavior that supports what they mean? Is that clearly articulated? Have they got a manifesto developed that brings it all to life? And are they clear on the results that executive team is meant to be producing? So that's the kind of work I do in a culture compass facilitation. In those workshops, this is what I've noticed. When people come together, especially if they're a newish team, people are afraid of each other. And it's not because they're big, bad, and ugly. It's because that's a normal human reaction. We are often reticent about coming into a new group because we don't know the rules of engagement. We don't know where we sit. There's this kind of pecking order thing that needs to go on. In old leadership models, this is called the forming and norming stage of a group, where you kind of get to be familiar with each other, how things work, what becomes an established routine for the group. And until you get there, it's kind of people are a little bit bristly and careful around each other. As leaders, it's our job to make the experience of coming together as safe as possible. We set the tone, we set the expectations, we lay down the ground rules with our team about what's okay and what's not okay in terms of sharing and participating in a group experience. We call people out if they breach those rules. And we show open-heartedness ourselves by expressing what our concerns are, where we know where we're going right, where we've admitted where we've gone wrong. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that people will naturally feel a bit weird around each other until they don't. The other thing I think that happens in that sort of forming stage is that there's a lot of assumptions and misreads that go on. Just watching people and hearing their debrief of the event afterwards, I had people comments like, "Oh, do you think I was too overbearing in that conversation? Do you think I spoke too much?" And I saw that, Jan was kind of made a face at that point. And I'd observed Jan making the face, but it wasn't in response to anything that this first person had said. It was more because Jan was having an emotional trigger about something else that had been said. I know this because she talked about it later. So there's a lot of people are observing each other acutely and inaccurately. So they are making interpretations of somebody's expression without knowing them well enough to understand what that expression might mean. Now, I'm often told I have a very expressive face, and I know this from being an experiential educator out on some programs where participants had to find their way through difficult exercises. And they always keep one eye out on the facilitator to see if they can get any clues from the facilitator's face. And sometimes, apparently, I have funny expressions, which they leapt on and thought it was giving them intel they didn't have. Usually, though, I was probably hungry. That's the truth of it. So I had to tell them up front, don't rely on my facial expressions. I could just be amusing myself or hungry, more likely hungry. So don't think you're going to get anything out of my eyebrows, because apparently my eyebrows move a lot when I talk. Yeah, so the point is that people misinterpret what's going on all the time. And as leaders, we want to make sure that we're double checking with each other, and making it safe to say, to set the example of, say, for example, Jan, I noticed you seem to be having a reaction to what's being said here. Can I just check what's going on for you? And you don't make an assumption. You just invite Jan to share her story. And Jan might say something like, no, I wasn't listening. I wasn't concerned about what was happening now. I was still thinking about something that Fred said 2 minutes ago. Oh, okay. So now it's an opportunity to revisit and close off the conversation around Fred before you're moving forward, and everybody relaxes a little bit. I think when it comes to culture, one of the first things you need to do, and I encourage all my clients to do this too, is to decide what kind of culture you actually want. And when it comes to culture, there's one of three lead wheels you can have. And I take this straight from Michael Henderson's book, Above the Line, where he talks about a tricycle for culture. And there are basically three types of cultures that you can have. And there's only one lead wheel. You need all three wheels, but only one can be in the lead. The three wheels are operational excellence. So running a smooth, tight ship is basically operational excellence. Getting more stuff out faster would be one of their key results. Number 2 is customer intimacy. You're all about serving the customer, creating a great customer experience. And the third one is product innovation. It's always about creating something new and anticipating the market. Those are all three quite different things. And if you put any one of those things at the head of the tricycle, it flavors the rest of what you do. So if you have an operational excellence culture, you know it's going to be heavy on discipline and process and structure. If you have a customer intimacy lead wheel, you know it's all going to be about relationships and communication and outreach. And if you have product innovation at the front wheel, you know that that culture is going to be about idea generating and collaboration and conversation that has to do with new ideas, basically, and prototyping and testing. So once you know what your lead wheel is, it makes it much easier to determine what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, who our clients are, how we serve them, etc. You build from there. And what you do when you build from there, once you know what your culture is, there's 5 things in particular you need to pay attention to. And I went through these in the second webcast of the series I was doing, Secrets of Elite Executive Teams. Those are available on my YouTube channel. And I will put a link into the show notes to it so you can check that out as well. So the 5 things that you can build on once you know what your lead wheel is: purpose. What's the purpose of your team, of your organization? Get that really super clear. Why do you exist? Sounds obvious, but so often not commonly articulated. Second thing you need is to be absolutely dead clear on your results. Rewind this podcast and listen to the rant I just gave on that piece. That's the second piece. The third one is structure. What is the structure of your team? And this is how you help people feel safe. Do they know how decisions are made, how delegation is made, who reports to whom, who is responsible for what, where does accountability sit? Those kinds of things are pretty critical. They're like the boundaries to help people understand what's in their remit, what's in other people's remit, and how you get stuff done. Number 4 is strengths. Know your team's strengths. Many ways to do this. Use a profiling instrument if you want to. I think that's one of my favorite ways to figure this out. I love using DISC. It's the simplest people reading tool I've come across. Very easy to explain and to remember. And there's a whole heap of other ones as well. HBDI, Leadership Maturity Framework, Values Assessment. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. So you can do that, or you can ask each other to share what they think their strengths are, and to point out each other's strengths is another way of doing that. And the 5th thing you need to build on is speaking up. To set the expectation that you will have rigorous feedback between team members about projects, about ideas, and that it's all in the intent of building a strong, trusting team, so that it's never about the relationships. When you criticize or critique, it's always about the ideas, and you're there on the same team trying to build a better organization and better projects and better ideas. That only happens when you can speak up, speak frankly, challenge the status quo, challenge the ideas. Know that your crazy idea is welcome on the table. It will be challenged. No one's going to steal it from you. You will be recognized and acknowledged for it. When all those things in place, you got a solid foundation. So when you've got a strong sense of purpose, you know the results that you're creating. It's like those are the front and back wheels of your bicycle. One is leading the way, the other one is trailing along clearly behind. The gears in the middle, the structure, strengths, and speaking up, get the whole machine moving. And when those are working really super well, then you're going to have collaboration. You're going to have people really wanting and willing to share their talents and strengths with each other, and happy to do so in a safe environment. You're going to have innovation. People will want to come up with crazy new ideas because they feel safe and supported in that environment, and they know that no one's going to steal their thunder. And you have engagement. So when people feel safe and their strengths are being built upon, that's when you love to rock up to work, because every day you're growing stronger and feeling like you belong, you're accepted, you're useful, and you're part of making a difference. Okay, so those were my big tips on leadership frameworks to help you with culture and strategy. As always, I'd love to hear your feedback. You could get on board by rating and reviewing the podcast. That will get you a guaranteed mailed out journal for you, People Stuff journal that we've had printed up. So an actual thing in the post. When was the last time you got something in the post? So cool. And you can go into, because I've only got 5 grand prizes, there's not that many reviews in there. So you have a pretty good chance of getting one of the top 5 prizes. The top 5 grand prizes are People Stuff journal, a copy of my book, People Stuff, and one of our very exclusive People Stuff mugs, which are pretty awesome, actually. I don't sell those anywhere either. So if you want to do that, hop on to iTunes or whatever platform you're listening to, write a review, rate the podcast, come over to our site. The link will be in the show notes of this show, and let us know that you did it. So we have somewhere to send you the journal, and we'll pop that in the post for you. Okay, well, that's my soliloquy. We'll go with soliloquy for today. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. In the meantime, live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast with leadership expert Zoe Routh. For more about People Stuff and to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.